Welcome to episode 26 of the What Happens Next podcast, the podcast dedicated, if you're in your 50s and 60s, to helping you work out what the next chapter of your life's going to be. I'm really pleased on this episode to have the insights of a guy that I've admired from afar and whose work has had a real positive impact in terms of the way that I work with clients, a guy called George Kinder. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Ames. I'm the host of the What Happens Next podcast, but I'm also a childhood financial planner here in the UK, and I spend my days having conversations with clients who are thinking about their next step. But interestingly, George, in this interview and in all of his work, provides a really unique perspective, because George, who's based out in Hawaii, and funny enough, when we interviewed him, I was in my office, which was a little bland. It's a lovely office, but a little bland. And George was looking over a Hawaiian sunset. And yeah, I was a little bit jealous, I've got to be honest, but it was lovely to chat to George. But here's what George shares that can give us some really unique insights in terms of thinking about what's next in our lives. George talks about the importance of freedom and defining what a rich life means for us. George also talks about the fact that people have these dreams, but often life's demands get in the way. And he talks about the practical steps of how we might think about our lives so that we can actually live our version of a life well lived. George Kinder talks also about the fact that a lot of the work we do as financial planners is technical and it's about the money, but there's also an element of making sure that we're thinking about helping people from a emotional perspective, and that starts with listening well. And finally, you'll get a lot out of the 3 questions that George shares as part of his work that have really informed the conversations I've had with clients over the years, and certainly help me and my clients live better future lives. So without further ado, let's have a conversation with George. Part of the issue we've got when we're thinking about what happens next in our lives is having the self-awareness, having the introspection to be able to think about what the gaps in our well-being are. And we're doing loads of work at the minute with What Happens Next to build solutions that are going to help you think about well-being in a nuanced way when you're thinking about how it applies to your life. One of the first things we've built that you can use today is our What Happens Next quiz. It's free to do, takes about 5 minutes, but what it will do is give you an insight into the areas of strengths when it comes to your well-being and the areas you might want to improve. You can take the What Happens Next quiz at whathappensnext.life/quiz, and I hope it helps you in your journey to work out what happens next for you. Hi, and welcome to this What Happens Next interview. I'm super excited today because we've got one of certainly somebody who's been a massive influence in my life and what we do here at Savello, but also the way that we think about what happens next in our lives and some of the questions we might want to consider asking ourselves when we're thinking about what happens next. It's George Kinder. How are you, George?
Great, Chris. Nice to be with you. We're about, 10 hours in time zone, 11 hours in time zone difference today?
We are. But the wonders of modern technology means that we can do this, right? Which is brilliant.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing. I'm sitting here at the start of February in London, which isn't as picturesque as where you are at the minute.
You can see a little bit in the light in the window and back that The sun has just risen, and it's absolutely gorgeous here in Hana, Hawaii,
I
up in Maui. Yeah,
love that.
way in the back.
What
Yep.
you were saying just before the call about Hawaii? What makes Hawaii so special for you?
Well, I think I grew up in the Midwest in America, just on the edge of the East Coast, and then I spent a huge amount of my time on the East Coast. I'd never been to a tropical island before. I'd never experienced, and here we have not only the tropics, but I live in the midst of an indigenous community. So I most of the people who live in this community are Native Hawaiian. So it's quite extraordinary. We've got jungle, we've got ocean, we've got mountain, we've got incredible walks everywhere. 7 beaches within a 5-minute drive. It's quite incredible. Yeah,
Can I ask you one? I mean, I want to dig a bit deeper in
yeah,
terms of
sure.
sort of
Yeah,
the questions that I want to ask you. As I said to you before the call, I'm off with Russ to the Amazon this year, and I'm really
yeah,
excited about that.
yeah.
Talk to me about one thing that I'm really curious about when we do our trip is the perspective of people who live in all this nature and how it differs from us urbanites who are used to just sort of driving to the store. And so help me understand, when you moved, what did you learn about the unique perspective of indigenous people of Hawaii?
Well, I was very interested in them, and I had a mentor who was Native Hawaiian, one of the leaders in the whole Hawaiian community, and not just here in Hana, but all over Hawaii. And so I was really fascinated with their perspective. So I really just dived in and I read a
Yeah.
lot, and I mean, the most important thing I think is to respect who they are and to be um, good listeners, be
Mm.
a really good listener, and not to think, oh gosh, that person's in my way,
Yeah.
whatever the busy life of a Western city dweller is. That it's very different here, and so having respect for them is probably the most important thing. Nature is another thing. I've always loved being in nature. I've written like 5, 6, 7 books about with photography and poetry of and a practice of presence in nature. So I'm
Yeah.
really interested in just what is it like to be, and here it's a totally different nature from kind of England and the Northeast in America.
Love that. Absolutely love that. So I know a lot about you, but for the people who are watching this video, and just so we're super clear, I'm really conscious that in our financial planning practice, a lot of the clients who are coming to see us now are thinking about what happens next in their lives. And that's not only from a financial perspective, that's from the perspective of how do we live healthy, happy lives if we've done something for 30 to 40 years, we've had that ladder up the wall and we've been climbing up it, but now we know we need to make a positive change. And when we were thinking about who we could interview to provide a massive insight into that, clearly your name came near the top of the list.
Right.
So, for the benefit of our audience, why is that? And tell us a bit about you.
Well, for me, I mean, probably the word that speaks to me more than any other word is freedom. And when I was a young man, I mean, I'm Harvard educated, so I'm really well educated. But when I got out of school, what I really wanted to be, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to live in nature. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to have a deep life, and
Yeah.
I did not want to work your 9 to 5 job and all of that. So I was hugely conflicted as a young man. But what I did was I kept that passion for living a really rich life in the forefront of my life. And I, what I had to do, Chris. I mean, I was scrambling and trying to figure out what to do, and I lucked out on figuring out that people needed to get tax returns done once a year, and if I did it for a few months out of the year, I could survive. I could get out, I could get to Hawaii, I could travel, I could do things. So that's what I did at first, and the problem was I was very good at it. And so a
Right.
lot of people came my way, and it began to build a business. And so what I then began to realize was that everybody has something that they really have wanted to do, and that somehow the business of life, the to-dos, the kids, the requirements of a job, those kinds of things, has gotten in the way, and usually has gotten in the way in a fairly significant way. That was true for every one of my clients. There was some
Yeah.
way that they were just not who they really wanted to be. And so that stimulated me to get a degree in financial planning.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of the reason I got the degree in financial planning was I wanted to figure out how to free myself so that I was more free of the business that I'd built up.
You
Um,
know what?
but
It's
yeah,
it's really interesting because I'm interviewing loads of interesting people about what happens next.
yeah,
I'm doing it so we can support our clients and prospective clients to do that. I think secretly I'm doing it for me in 10 years.
yeah. There you go. There you go.
I'm thinking these are questions. So I'm 46. So I've got. I mean, I love running Savello. I love having interest. But you think of it. You start to think about this sort of stuff in a different way as you get a little bit older, don't you? What do you think?
I think you ought to do it in 2 years, maybe a year and a half, Chris. That's honestly my thought.
That's bold. That's
And
bold. Yeah, that's you're probably about right though. You're
and
probably about right.
that's how life planning works. That's what my methodology does. We look at getting people free almost immediately. I mean, not immediately because there's things that have to be tied up and done, but too often we're making sacrifices that we shouldn't be. And our
Yeah,
we only you guys colonized India a long time ago, and over in India, people they think they live many lives, but gosh, in the West, we just get one life. In America, we just get one life, and you better live it. And
yeah,
and so that's my perspective, is that it's really important to live it. And having sacrificed, I spent 13 years doing tax returns for a living, and I, I that was I gritted my teeth and I was determined I would get that time back. So I've lived a good life. I've eaten well. I've exercised well, and all that kind of stuff. Because that's a lot of time to sacrifice.
yeah.
I
So you were doing tax returns, quite transactional work. You moved into financial planning and then started talking about life planning. What's the journey been since then?
Well, it's been pretty incredible. I mean, I've always kept my passion at the forefront, which is why I've been able to write these 6 books of photography and poetry, as well. And they're about nature, and they're about mindfulness practice in nature. Living in the present moment is really what I've written about mostly.
Yeah,
But then at the same time, simultaneously, the people were coming to me and going, "How do you do this? How can I do it?" And so I started lecturing on that, and gaining a national audience in America. And then I came over to the UK because I love the UK.
yeah,
And before you knew it, I had people who'd studied with me from 30 countries. And we set up a designation to show people exactly how they could get their clients step by step by step to, first of all, the first thing is to get that vision so strong. What is
yeah,
that passion that you're looking for 10 years from now? And make it so strong and say, hey, it's time. This is you. This is who you are. 10
yeah.
years from now, you might be hobbled. Who knows what life's going to deliver you. And this is who you are. Let's get going on it. And I think you can do it. And so we train people to give their clients that confidence, to give them the emotional support. So we train them in great listening, in empathy, because gosh, it's hard to make change like that happen
Yeah,
on a dime. And even if you've been planning it for years and holding off for years, it's very hard to do. So we
yeah,
train them that. We train them in how to get really incredibly inspired by the client's
yeah,
life, by who they want to be,
yeah,
and then design, the financials to make it work. So
yeah,
that's
cool.
that's been very exciting, And now I'm kind of at the end of who knows how long I'll last. I'm up there in years, as you can probably tell. But I'm writing. I'm writing like crazy and writing a book now on what I call the three domains of freedom, thinking that freedom actually has three elements that are really profoundly important to every person. And the subtitle of that book is the key. And I know we're going to come back to life planning because that's where your base is. But the subtitle of that book, so there's the three domains of freedom. And the first domain subtitle is each moment is yours.
Yeah.
And the second domain, and that's mindfulness, basically. It's learning to be here every moment of your life. And then the second domain is your life is yours. And that's life planning. And that's why I say, let's get going. Let's, in a matter of months and at most a couple of years, let's live the life we're meant to live. And then the third domain, and this is the one we're really struggling with right now all across the world, is civilization is yours.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things, that's been, the Magna Carta, you guys started it off, Parliament and all that kind of stuff. And then we took it over. And, I don't mean we took it over, but we took it on and we went, we went wild with it. And now we're struggling all over the world. There's struggles around it. And civilization's yours. We're meant to live civilization should be as great and as value-based as you and I are. I mean, it should be the best of humanity. Yeah. And so that's where I am right now. I'm writing it.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Right. I've got a few things that I want to ask you about what you said. We're going to come back to those three because I think there's some really interesting things about that.
Yeah.
At the start of our interview, you talked about depth. You said you wanted a deep life, and I really like that phrase. What does that mean to you? What does a deep life look like?
Well, for me, I don't know how it was. I think I was living in the hills of southern Ohio and wandering in them as a boy. I just felt there was more to life than going to school, and more to life than working, and that it was. And that it had an interior aspect to it, and that everybody was off in that workaday life or in the school life that I certainly was in for a long time, was missing it. That there's something here that's incredible about life, and I wanted to know what it was, and I wanted to explore it. I wanted to dive into it. I studied. Contemplative practices, meditative practices from all the spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
I studied all the arts and the culture. I studied many philosophies. But mostly what I did was I lived that kind of as a discipline. I did a mindfulness kind of practice for several hours a day from the age of 20 until into my 70s. There I am. That's my age, man. And I've practiced that all my life. And what I've wanted to know is what is this all about?
Yeah. No, I love that because it isn't about that worker bee going to work. That isn't the meaning, is it? And I don't think for any of us actually that is the meaning of it.
Yeah.
Why do you think we get stuck?
Yeah. Well, part of it is civilization. Part of it is that the way that civilization has evolved, it's we don't like to hear this because of Magna Carta and democracy and all the rest, but there's a way in which we're still working for the boss.
We're still there's a hierarchical structure, isn't there, that still pertains.
Exactly. It's that hierarchy. It's hierarchies of power. It's Mad King George. We're still.
Yeah, I mean the bloke at the top has probably changed a few times, but the structure remains.
We got Elon Musk and Donald Trump and a few others, but at least that's in America. But they govern the world to some extent. Gosh, horrible. But anyway, that's right. So I think we're still the hierarchies of power. Here's a question for you, Chris, about that. When you ask about why. So we do have an amazing system. And you and I have been laughing about how, I'm 10 hours time zone difference and we're in incredible cultures and you're going off on a trip and it's going to be amazing all over the world. We're so free. And it's been the system that we set up that it has enabled these incredible innovations to give us this kind of freedom. And the thing that, again, living a deep life and asking these deep questions. So reflecting on that, really appreciating it, being grateful for it, but then asking, well, if this really was the best system, which a lot of people say, yeah, it's the best system and all that, you can't get any better, and or it's the best system, nobody else has anything better. But if it is, we're the best system. We have these 250 years since the Industrial Revolution started in your country, and in the North, and just exploded across the world. And if our system was the very best system that could be, shouldn't it be that after 250 years of development, at the top of you talked about them, at the top of every one of those hierarchies of power, we would find the best of humanity. We would find wisdom and compassion, and we would find those values filtering down through those hierarchies. So tell me one hierarchy of power in the world that has that kind of wisdom and compassion after 250 years. So
it's so interesting because you could argue that actually the people who reach the top of the hierarchy have got the money, right? There could be a financially driven motivation to that. But so I suppose there's two elements of this. Number one, what does success look like, right? So a lot of the clients that I'm sure you worked with, and I certainly work with, and I ask the question of myself, and I always talk about this with my eldest daughter Charlotte. What does success look like? I think success is improved well-being, like just feeling better about the world. And I actually think being present in the moment is something that I'm learning now to be better at. So my mindfulness practice has only just started. I only started 6 months ago, but I'm really enjoying that journey. So that's good. But so I think there's that. But also you look at the happiest countries in the world, the Scandinavian countries and the Bhutan and countries like that, Singapore potentially, and they live on a different value metric to the America and England. So what can we learn from those countries? And I think it's interesting. It's really, really interesting. Now, we've talked a little bit about the concept of life planning and the difference between life planning and financial planning. How do they differ, and how would you explain that to somebody who didn't know what either was?
Yeah, great. Well, life planning was once defined by one of my students who was the head of the Financial Planning Association in America, which at that point had like 30,000 financial planners in it. And it was the most influential association of certified financial planners in the world. And he came through my program and he said, life planning isn't any different from financial planning. It's just that it's financial planning done right, is what he said. Yeah. And so one definition would be it's done right, but there's another definition that I offer. But if it is financial planning done right, the reason that he said that was that in life planning, there's no question, we put the client first.
Yeah.
We put the client first. And you'll see that in our meetings. We spend a couple of meetings really getting to know who the client.
If this is the first time you've listened to What Happens Next, welcome to the show. We are committed to making sure that we do as much as we can to help you navigate whatever's next in your life. And there's a home for What Happens Next, whathappensnext.life. We'd love for you to visit the site. On it, you will see loads of interviews, a link to take the What Happens Next quiz, an opportunity to sign up to the waiting list for the book, and much, much more. Take a look on the visit site, and we'd love to know what you think.
Really most wants to be, and what they most want to do in life. And then we put the money in. So we don't spend a half hour or 10 minutes or 15 minutes trying to, getting their goals written down. We really listen to them, because often people are shy about it. They have secret passions or secret sorrows, and it's hard, to tell a financial advisor. Imagine telling a broker what your secret sorrows.
I think it's hard to come up with those solutions yourself as well, right? Somebody asks you who you want to be in 10 years, and it's like, well, I've never really thought about it deeply enough so and I think how I'm always conscious when somebody sits in front of me, George, that there needs to be a relationship of trust that means that I need to listen. Right. It's just, it's so interesting. Help me understand the question we should ask ourselves when we're thinking about what happens next in our life if we're not working with an advisor. What do you think the starting point is?
Well, I mean, there are a bunch of different approaches, and I think they're all really valuable. And I'm sure that you have thought of a number of them, or practiced a number of them, or have a number of them in your toolkit. I've written, in addition to books of poetry and photography and mindfulness, I've written books about civilization. I've written books about money, and in the books about money that I'm sure you've touched into one or two of them.
Yeah,
they are. Yeah, I put 3 or 4 exercises in there. The one that's most famous is called the 3 questions, and they're, give yourself all the money that you need for the rest of your life and see what you do. Just think, what would I do with that? And then the second question is, well, but what if you only had 5 to 10 years left to live? What would you do? And that's the second question. And that we ask. And then we ask a third question. The third question sounds like it won't go anywhere, but it's actually the question that we model most people's lives around. And that third question is, this time you go to the doctor and she tells you, hey, I misdiagnosed. Really sorry. I mean, I can't believe I did this. Misdiagnosed. You have a rare disease, and it has come to term. You have 24 hours left to live. And the question is to reflect on all the things that you'd anticipated doing or being or becoming, and just ask yourself, what did I miss? And who did I not get to be? And what did I not get to do? And when you ask those questions, you talked about a deep life earlier. That's getting pretty deep, right? And when you ask yourself those questions, usually in those questions there are answers to who you're meant to be now. It may be that you didn't get to be with your kids. It may be that you didn't get to travel. It may be that you didn't live with greater honesty or kindness or generosity of spirit in your life. It may be that you didn't get to write the great book or do the TikTok videos now, that you feel like, I could really do this. So and those are the things then that we go to as life planners, that we train the advisors to go to, and expand on what the vision would be if you were living that life. What would that really look like?
Yeah.
And let's make it happen.
That last one is super powerful, isn't it? Because that gets to the point of underlying purpose of our lives as individuals, doesn't it? It's like, what are we here for? What are we here for? And how do we live this unique, beautiful life in the way that we want to? I think we're really lucky, actually, and I'm really grateful for being a financial planner.
Yeah.
Because I get to learn every day. I mean, I like doing projects like this because phoning people up and going, "You're really interesting. Can I have a chat?" can sound a bit strange if you're not doing it. But doing it for these sort of stuff so we can share knowledge and share information is great. I also find myself learning from clients, and I'm really curious. What have you learned from the clients you've worked with in the past and the financial planners and the life planners you've trained?
Well, I think just as you mentioned a minute ago, not everybody immediately knows who they are, where they're going, what they really want. But a lot of people do. And a lot of people feel that and particularly when they're prompted by these questions. And most people are not living completely who they really want to be.
Mm.
Most people. And I've never had a single client come through my office, and I don't work with individual clients anymore. I haven't had a single advisor, and we've had thousands of them come through our trainings. I haven't had a single advisor come through our trainings who's not missing something in their life, something. And that when we really listen to them, I mean, it's not about us pushing them. We're not suggesting anything, but are really listening to them. We hear what they long for, what they miss, what they didn't get to do, what they aren't doing. And so that's an extraordinary thing, that civilization, as great as it is and as lucky as you and I are, it's not set it up so it's automatic.
No.
That we live our lives as ours.
How important do you think distraction is? Because it's so easy to be distracted, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sometimes, I'm thinking about a lot of these big questions at the minute and what my next 10 years and 1, 3, 5, and 10 look like.
Yeah.
And they're tough. They're tough to answer for our clients, but they're also fairly difficult to answer for ourselves.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that we're donating the time and really truly answering that? Does that
Right.
come with to help, or how would you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things. One of them would be the passion. Have you stimulated enough passion for who you really want to be? And then you're determined. You have it up on your kitchen, on your refrigerator, the little magnet. You got pictures of it everywhere, whatever. And you've got your calendar marked off with the days that you're really going to be doing what you want to do. So, do you really live that passion? Are you pursuing that passion? Is one thing. And then I think the second thing is getting help. I think that's something that you and I have been passionate about. It sounds like you've been passionate about it, and I certainly have. That when a client comes in, I mean, I had a client who was their passion was to be with their family, and their family had grown up and traveled. They were in different parts of the world and all this kind of stuff, and and the parents came in and they said, it was a renewal meeting once a year or once a quarter, and they came in and they said, we're going to redo our kitchen, and it's going to cost us $50,000. And we're so excited about it. Look what we're going to do. And I sat there and just, listened and was very supportive. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow, 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 wow. And then after, that had gone through it, and they'd been able to see that I was there for them. I said, I do have one question for you, though. When we did your 3 questions, kitchen wasn't there. And I know you don't have, oodles and oodles of money. What was there was your family, and really wanting to be with your family. So my question is this going to hamper that, or is this going to strengthen that? And they went, oh my, yeah, you're right. And what they decided was, we're going to take a 2-week vacation in Mexico every year instead, and fund that, and bring the family together and support those who can't do it so easily. So
I read one of your articles on your website in preparation, and I've known about your work, and I've read a couple of your books and stuff like that. And it was linked to the Bronnie Ware book, 5 Regrets of the Dying, which I think is amazing, by the way. And it's, what do you, like, sort of, what do you regret, and what are you going to remember at the end? And it's not a new kitchen, is it? it's
Yeah.
it's memories with the people you love and like.
That's right.
That's the element
Yeah.
that's really important. And I think it's so interesting in terms of that gentle challenge to say, is this really aligned with what you want? I'll tell you the bit I'm curious about though. And this is interesting, and I think I might be asking for me as opposed to our audience, but I'm hoping our audience sort of are curious about this too. Often, what we want out of life changes as we mature, right?
Right.
So, how often do you think we should be thinking about how we redefine what the answers to those three questions are?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a real short answer and then I'll tell you my own experience. And
Mm,
the shorter answer is every 3 months to 2 years, do it
yeah,
again, do
yeah,
it again. And another short answer is whenever you have gone through a crisis or the world has hit you with a blow that is just like, whoa, this is a lot, then it's time to reconsider. For me, what I did, I mean, I was kind of lucky because I was traveling the world, doing these workshops all over the world and training advisors, and I'd be asking them the questions, and every once in a while as they're doing the questions in the workshop, I'd sit down and write my answers to them myself. So I automatically was doing them every few months, just
how has your own one evolved over the years?
how have mine evolved. Well,
Yeah,
one of the really interesting things that here I am talking to you 10 hours away and in one of my favorite countries in the world. One of the things that happened to me over the years was, I mean, they stayed the same for a long time. I wanted to, believe it or not, and this is what my books are about, I wanted to write illuminated manuscripts. I wanted to live a deep life, and I wanted to live in nature, in the weather.
yeah, yeah.
And so that was pretty stable and varied a bit. And then suddenly, gosh, I don't know how far I was in my career, but suddenly, out of the blue, into the third question came the city of London. The city of London. Where does that come from?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
and I realized I want to spend time there. I want to spend a lot
Oh,
of time
brilliant
there.
city. You know,
It's
I love. I mean, I'm a Londoner, so
yeah,
I'm a bit biased,
yeah,
but tired of London, tired of life. You know, it's just, it's such an amazing city, and you could argue that about
yeah,
a lot of cities in the world, but
yeah,
I think
yeah.
London's got a charm about it that's brilliant. Yeah,
Oscar Wilde. What did he say? If you're tired of London, you're tired of life.
yeah,
I
exactly.
mean,
Love it.
yeah.
Absolutely love it. Um, I know one of your books is about money maturity and the 7 stages of that. Can you explain a bit how that applies
Yeah,
to when people are thinking about their lives?
sure. And I should say that my third question also changed when my kids were born. That suddenly they came in much stronger. I mean, I didn't, I hadn't imagined really having a family, and there they were. So that was wonderful. But
So
yeah,
we'll talk about money maturity in a minute. I'm curious about that because I've got 2 girls. I'm a dad. I'm a dad, and
yeah,
my two are 12 and 20 at the minute.
yeah,
And what's interesting is how your identity changes as your kids get older.
yeah,
Um, uh, but I think I think purpose actually for me was interesting when you become a dad because you're then thinking about, like, even when I'm not around, I want them to be proud of the work that I've done. So it's interesting. How did having kids impact the way you looked at the world?
yeah. I think mostly. I mean, it was a question of how do I balance this
Yeah,
life that I wanted to have with the life that I now wanted to have with my girls, and how, like you're saying about influence in a way, or them being proud of you in some way. How do I have that impact day to day, and as we went through life. Now they're now 20 years old and they're off in college and at uni, as you say, and studying. But I, during their childhood, if times would get rough, there would be, they would be annoyed with me, or I'd be annoyed with them. And how do I learn to really be there with them at that time was a wonderful lesson that I learned to go just sit on the couch next to them, and
Yeah.
with no agenda, just drop whatever it was that I was annoyed at, or whatever it was they were annoyed at me, and just sit there and be happy to be there with them. And eventually they picked that up and they realized, wow, he cares, or he's here, or so I don't know what you do. There's no book on it really that I
No.
know that I read. You just kind of live it, and you try to be the best person you can. And
Yeah,
that was
100%. 100%.
wonderful.
But I think that as you say, I'm still learning, trying to navigate parenthood. I thought I'd got it right the first time, and then I've got to relearn it with again, because kids are different. But certainly make them understand and feel that I think we all want to feel important, don't we? And that's particularly applies to our kids. So tell me a little bit about the 7 stages of money maturity and what they are.
Yeah, so that was the first book that I wrote, and it really started the whole movement of life planning. And it was it was written in the '90s, and I started a think tank with the CFP community in America, and then it begun to bring it abroad. At first, as I said, to the UK, but the notion there, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, we can look back now and see, but I knew that something was off around money, and that we were too tied to it. We were too invested in it. We were, like you were saying, that we were distracted by it.
Mm.
And it's an easy measure, right? You're always measuring yourself. That's one of the things we do as human creatures. And so it's an easy measure to see, well, I've got this much in the bank, or I'm earning this much per year. And oh gosh, you're offering me that much? Wow, I can't say no to that. And there you are. And it's just like that's kind of governing your life. You don't even realize it. And so I'd been working in my tax practice, believe it or not, and in Cambridge, Massachusetts, this highly academic area, an area of great entrepreneurs. There are also a huge number of psychotherapists. And I had practically all of them in my hip pocket as clients, and so I was learning from them. I'm very curious, and I was going off to their postgraduate programs. I would travel the world to be with their great teachers. So I studied with some of the great therapists in the world at that time. And I wrote this book. I thought, well, what money maturity is about is being mature oneself and then linking it to money. So you go through this process of working through the difficult emotions, and your naive ideas about life, and what I called innocent ideas of life, and your pain. And then you develop these adult skills of knowledge. And that's what you and I bring with our financial planning skills, knowledge, although there's personal knowledge as well, which is huge, and understanding, which is deepening the heart and being more wise in our relationships to the suffering that happens in the world. And then the third stage of vigor, of vitality, and bringing all of that so that we can really make a difference in the world. And then the final 2 stages are more like maturity itself, or awakening. And they have both a visionary quality where we can see further. It's like seeing these inspirations that you and I have been talking about. And what I'm trying to do now, which is seeing civilization. How can we make civilization so that it's naturally wise rather than polarized and broken apart? And then the final stage is something I called aloha. Here I am in Hawaii, and aloha is their term for generosity, for kindness, for love, for a depth of spirit, for living in nature, for feeling the kind of the winds of the currents of life, and of a deeper life inside of ourselves. So that it's a spirit of generosity, really.
Love that. Love that. And actually, that's good for us as well, right? You know, my last book
Yeah.
was on kindness,
Oh,
because you've been on my podcast. I'm a firm believer in making sure that we're good to other people, because that's the civilization that I'd love to live in.
yeah, absolutely.
Uh, One really interesting thing there that sort of I just wanted to pick your brains on is that element where we go through life and we go through pain and struggle and try and like overcome these challenges.
Right.
The interesting thing is that element of still maintaining that enthusiasm for life, that vigor and that passion post those um, challenges happen. How do you think we do that in a really meaningful way?
Well, I think they're really the two principles that come out of life planning, out of and what we call advisors. And I mean, the root of it for an advisor is great listening.
Yeah,
So you listen um, selflessly. I mean, that's the astonishing thing. I mean, most people think of financial advisors as being greedy and self-centered, and sometimes a little too cocky and arrogant. And what we train our advisors to do, number one, is to listen,
mm,
and to listen without putting yourself in the way.
yeah,
And what happens out of that is that, like you're talking about these struggles that people go through, and how do they come back to their dreams. And what we train the advisors to do is listen for two things primarily. I mean, you listen to everything, but there are two things that cause this that you're talking about them. I mean, one of them is sorrow and struggle and anger and frustration and depression and all the dark stuff. And you listen there, and what you don't do what a therapist does, which is go back and look at, well, why did this happen and what did your parents do, and all that kind of stuff. All we do is empathize, but we give really, really great support and great empathy.
mm,
And the client feels it. So
yeah,
what we need, first of all, to do through empathy, it could be through therapy, could be through a mentor, is to move through, like the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell talks about. We need
yeah,
to move through that darkness in order to get back to the light. And we do it by kindness is one thing, by
yeah,
being kind to ourselves and by being open. And there's a particular way mindfulness can help, because there's a way of feeling your feelings, but letting your thoughts go. That's my mantra.
yeah.
Let your thoughts go, let your feelings be. And so that's one way. But then the other way is, and we train the advisors to do this, is keep your eye out for what excites the client, for where they're
Where's
inspired.
the smile come and the spark,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah,
exactly. And look for that and really support that as well. Gosh, you said when you spoke about gardening, you just lit up,
yeah,
and just celebrate
yeah.
what it is that the person loves.
I love
You
that.
do these two things.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh, 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 Absolutely love that. And that there's a real focus now on, instead of looking at that Freudian sort of therapy psychology. Martin Siegelman's book Thrive
Right.
talks about positive psychology and looking at the things that will help us thrive in the future.
Right.
It's absolutely brilliant. Um, so somebody watching this, they are really fascinated about sort of their own purpose as they go through their own lives, and they're thinking about sort of redefining purpose and the direction of their life over the next 10, 15, 20 years. Apart from the three questions, what actionable tips would you say actually that might be a really useful first step?
Yeah. Well, there would be a couple that I could think of, two or three I could think of, but I think the first thing is to know: are you going to do this yourself, or are you going to do this with the help of someone else?
Yeah,
And if you're going to do it yourself, first of all, 5, 10, 20 years, man, that's too long. Let me just say that right away.
Well, that's interesting because it feels too long, doesn't it? You know, what am I going to do tomorrow? So, what are the timescales that potentially work better?
Let me just say again the subtitle of the book. There are 3 domains of freedom. Each moment is yours.
Yeah,
Your life is yours. And civilization is yours.
Yeah.
So we're talking mostly about your life. And if you're talking about your life being yours in 5, 10, or 20 years, well, good luck to you. I mean, that's great, but your life is yours now.
now,
Take the bull by the horns and live it, man.
take action.
This is so I would be thinking, I don't know if I can do that, or if I can do that, then there are websites that are available. We've got one for free called Life Planning for You. That's a consumer website. And there are books, and you've written some books, and I've written some books. There are books out there that you can go to if you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
You haven't done it yourself so far. So you might think about, is there someone who has that combination of empathy for the challenges this is going to be, but really is into inspiration, what my inspiration might be, and can really get it, and then go look for them, find them. Yeah.
And I love that. I love that. And you're right about that time frame, because that 10-year person 10 years hence feels like a different individual, doesn't it? So it's not compelling enough to get us to move forward. So really important. George, thank you. I've got a couple more questions, but I'm getting a lot out of this personally. So I really appreciate your time, and I hope our audience is getting as much out of it as I am. I'm going to give you a magic wand.
Yeah.
And that magic wand allows you to change one thing about the third pillar. So I'm going to give you a magic wand. You're allowed to change one thing about civilization.
Yeah.
What would it be?
Oh, that's a piece of cake, man. I mean, I've done that. This is so what I'll tell you, I am proposing that we legislate one sentence. And that sentence we legislate all across the world. And I think it would solve most of the world's problems. And that sentence is that, well, first of all, you got to know what a fiduciary is. Fiduciary means trustworthy. And a lot of times it's used for clients or for the board of advisors or board of directors. But fiduciary really should mean trustworthy in all things. And so that's really what my proposal is about creating a structure of all of our hierarchies that are trustworthy in all things. And the one sentence legislative proposal is this, okay? And that is that that every hierarchy of power, every institution in civilization, whether it's for profit or it's not for profit or it's government, every institution is required to be a fiduciary to all the people that they contact, the stakeholders and everything, to all humanity, to truth. Boy, that's a big one right now. To truth, to the planet, and to democracy. And they have to be a fiduciary to those things ahead of their own self-interest.
Yeah.
So they can't look and go, can we make a profit on this? Yeah, I know it's not quite the truth, or there might be pollution coming out. No, you can't do that. You have to act humanely.
Is it the right thing to do first?
Yeah, humanely. You got to be humane. And we've given our institutions powers without requiring them to be humane. We've given them the freedom of speech, the freedom of press, without requiring them to be humans like us.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Like some of these large organisations, and I don't know if you've heard about this in the US, but there's a bit of scandal in the UK at the minute about the post office. And the way that they've treated sub postmasters, basically blaming them for the loss of money when it was their computer system that got it wrong. And there was it's been going on for years, 20 years. People have been sent to jail. There was a TV drama that sparked it all again. And that the government are looking at this. But when you sort of read about the reason why the post office didn't put their hands up and say we've got it wrong, because again, that's a deeply making mistakes is a deeply human thing to do, right? You know, we all do it.
Right. That's right. Yep.
They said that we couldn't do that because it was a danger to the brand. There's people that have been unfairly treated and actually like their lives being devastated, and you're worried about brand.
Absolutely.
So I love the fact that like sort of deeply human care and attention is where we've got to go, right?
Yeah. And the when I talk about the truth, and you're talking about them twisting things, and I think the truth, we don't have a proper standard for the truth. That the truth really means, if we're going to be caring about the truth, and this is for our government, our corporations, and our nonprofits, is that the truth means, if we're fiduciaries for the truth, it means the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yeah.
All out there. It's none of these conspiracy theories going off in one direction or another. If you've got one of those, well, that's the 99% of the bell curve. But you have the whole truth. You put it all up.
Yeah. And let people make their own independent choice, right?
That's,
as long as they've got the facts.
That's right. That's what we're supposed to be doing. It's what a democracy is. Right on, man. Let's do it.
100%. Love that. Yeah. George, thank you for your insight today. I've really enjoyed it. As I always do when I interview you, I interviewed you for my Kindness Project podcast. This one's been as insightful. So thank you so much. Cool. Where can people find out a bit more about you?
Well, there are two websites. One, if they want to find these kind of financial advisors, we're talking about registered life planners, and that's the kinderinstitute.com. And then the other one, where they can find out about all the wild and crazy things that I do, and they can get free copies of my book by subscribing to them, is georgekinder.com. Oh, and I've got an album on Spotify. I mean, there's lots of things that.
Oh, fabulous! So I'm looking that up as soon as we're done. Brilliant.
All
right, George. Thank you so much, mate. Have a lovely day.
Aloha. Yeah. Bye-bye.
I really hope you enjoyed that interview. And I know that podcasts are brilliant because when you're on the go, you can listen wherever you want. However, if you've got a few minutes, and like me, you're a bit more of a visual learner, you might want to visit our YouTube channel at What Happens Next Live. There'll be a link in the comments as well so that you can find us. And what I really appreciate you doing, we've got all the interviews on there, all the interviews you're listening to right there on there. But what we've also done is recorded exclusive content specifically for the YouTube channel that you can watch and get more insights into the next stage of your life and navigating it successfully. I'd ask while you're there, if you can, like the videos you like, and subscribe to the channel. It helps us help more people. Thank you.